Race number 2 then here at Rockingham, we're about to get underway. Lee Torrey and Joe Stables on row 1 ahead of Philip Cooper and Richard Stables. Then it's Joe Lock and Doug Carter and Adrian Reynard ahead of Chris Preen. Julian Caldwell and Adrian Williams round out the top 10 on a grid based upon the second fastest lap times from qualifying. So Torrey and Stables, row number 1 together again, and this time around is it going to be Torrey that leads down towards turn 1 again? Yes it is, gets a good start. Stables slots into second, Cooper third, then Richard Stables fourth, and here comes Adrian Reynard charging around the outside, trying to make up for the sluggish start that he made in race number 1. Down towards the Dean Hairpin we go though, and Joe Stables challenging for the lead round the outside line. If he goes right round the outside here, he has the inside down towards Yentwood. It doesn't work though, and Philip Cooper could take full advantage, comes up the inside of both of them and leads down towards Yentwood. So Philip Cooper, well, that was all because Joe Stables and Lee Torrey were so preoccupied with each other going through the hairpin that they forgot all about the little radical PR6 of Philip Cooper, who came and dived past the pair of them to take the race lead away. So Cooper leads from Torrey, from Joe Stables third. I think Richard Stables is still fourth as the rest of the field file through. There's Julian Caldwell, the red and yellow number 69 car, just looking to make it round the first lap this time around. And there's David Palmer in the lone spire in the race. But for second place, Joe Stables once again is staring at the rear wing of Lee Torrey's number 78 car as they head down towards the Tarzan hairpin. He looks at the inside line, he goes for it. Brilliant stuff. And Joe Stables goes through, but he runs a bit wide. Torrey will come back at him on the exit. And we know that Lee Torrey's car is pretty rapid in a straight line. He's got the wrong side of the road, though, really, down towards the Brook chicane. And so you'd imagine that it will be Stables who retakes the position, which he does. This is all allowing, though, Philip Cooper to pull a gap at the front of the field. So Cooper leads at the end of the opening lap. Joe Stables second, third for Lee Torrey, and fourth for Richard Stables, who already looks a bit racier in this one. And in fact, he's looking to the inside of Lee Torrey as they go down towards turn number 1. Lee just about is able to chop across his bows and defend the position through the banking, but then drifts up high again on the exit of the corner. And so Richard Stables thought about going to the inside line, instead goes to the outside to try and carry maybe a bit more speed off the corner. Again, it's another one of those light and agile PR6s, but he just can't quite make the move stick there. Down towards Yentwood, and Torrey is able to move back across onto the racing line. So Lee Torrey, who will already be frustrated to have lost himself a race victory on the final lap in race 1, not going about race 2 in quite the way that he would need to if he was going to get onto the top step of the podium this time either. Down to third, and Richard Stables is the man applying the pressure more than he is applying the pressure to the car in front of Joe Stables, who already is starting to get away and go after the race leader. So again, 13 minutes plus 20-minute race, excuse me. The AIM Technologies Bikesports Championship, the previous one was shortened to 13 minutes because of the red flag. This one will run to the full 20-minute duration. And as they come out of Tarzan, down towards the Brook chicane, we are only coming through to complete lap number 2, so plenty of time here for Joe Stables to go after the race leader. Although it has to be said that Torrey and Richard Stables staying with him over the second half of this lap in what are slightly more pleasant conditions than we had yesterday. It was a little bit overcast on the Saturday, but our 2 races on the Sunday, hopefully we're in for some really, really nice warm weather. Back out onto the banking comes this battle going on a bit further back. This is Joe Lock defending a position from the number 2 car that we're on board with there, Chris Preen. They turn their way back through the first corner. Chris Preen running within Class A. Joe Lock, however, is running in Class B, so they aren't fighting for class position. And of course, you score points within your class in bike sports racing, so you don't have to be winning the races overall to be leading the championship. But of course, there are individual class championships as well. So Lee Torrey is leading Class A championship by now 12 points over Richard Stables. So that's why that battle is all the more significant. In Class B, Joe Stables leads the way by just 6 points over Phil Cooper. So again, that's what makes that battle all the more significant. So if Phil Cooper were to win this race over Joe Stables, so he would be able to close that gap. Likewise, if Richard Stables can find a way past Lee Torrey, that will tighten things up in Class A. So championship battles running across both classes, both well worth watching. Down into Tarzan though, and you can see that Chris Preen is coming under increasing pressure now from Doug Carter. Doug Carter turns his way through. He also is running in Class A, is Doug, but didn't have a brilliant time of it at Alton Park. He had a non-finish in the first race, did Doug, which is why he's not running all that high in the championship, but we'll be looking of course to try and make up for that here this weekend. So back out onto the pit straight, wide line that Joe Locke takes there, and that will lose him momentum onto the pit straight, surely. Watch for the mirrors, because we could be about to see Chris Preen diving up the inside before too much longer. But Chris's car doesn't seem to quite have the straight line speed that he'd like. He's in the slipstream though, down towards the Dean hairpin. Late on the brakes, not late enough though. And so Locke will hang on. Joe Locke is defending pretty well though over the RSX of Chris Preen behind. Into Yentwood, defensive line taken by Locke. Preen tries to get the over-under and get the inside line into Chapman Curb, but it's very difficult to do that because you don't do much braking for that right-hander in a high downforce sports car such as these. Back through the Piff Paff and Kirby section, and Joe Locke doesn't look quite as quick for my money as Preen behind, but Chris just hasn't been able to find a way ahead thus far in this one. But there is plenty of time left to go, so he'll be trying to be as patient as he can here, but racing drivers don't do patient very well, especially when they can see other cars in front that they could go and race with, and Adrian Reynard is the man just up the road from these two. And Chris Preen will feel that if he could get past Joe Locke, he could probably go after Adrian Reynard, but if he spends too long stuck underneath the rear wing of the blue and black car, he's not going to be able to get after the leader. Speaking of, sorry, not the leaders, the car in front, these are the leaders, and they are a little bit closer together actually than I thought they might be. Philip Cooper I expected to get caught by Joe Stables eventually, but Joe is very much bringing Lee Torrey with him, so Joe Stables' lap times in this one, well, 125.3 is his fastest lap so far, compares to 24.8 yesterday, so yeah, he's about half a second off the pace that he ran in yesterday's race. That will be partly down to the warmer conditions, I suppose, that actually loses grip in the circuit when the track temperature starts to climb. I imagine that's what's happening in this race. Most people's lap times are down on what they were doing yesterday. Down towards Kirby go the leaders. And there is Lee Torrey, our Class A Championship leader. The main thing for him, I suppose, is that he's been able to pull a gap over Richard Stables, second place in the Class A Championship. So that really was his main priority. Still, this battle is raging further back, but the leaders are very close together now, and I think that as they come out onto the banking this time, Phil Cooper is going to have to watch his mirrors. In fact, he might be having to watch his mirrors now, because even before we get to the banking, Joe Stables is applying the pressure down into the left, right, left at the Brook chicane and back out onto the banking. And is Phil Cooper going to be able to resist the pressure from Joe Stables for much longer? Up onto the banking to go, up towards the Rockingham pit wall. Onto another lap, back with Joe Locke as he chases down Adrian Reynard. So despite the defensive job that Joe has had to do in this race, he has caught Adrian. So Adrian Reynard's pace not quite where it ought to be in this one, you'd imagine. Having, well, in fairness, originally been out-qualified by Joe Locke and by Doug Carter, who's at the back of this train. So it was a really good start this time for Adrian, rather than the poor start that he made in race one. And as a result, you then, though, end up ahead of cars that were quicker than you in qualifying. So naturally, your attention turns more to defence than attack in that instance. Plenty of defending going on, though, very good defending, and so no place is changing towards Dean this time. But all four of these cars now getting closer and closer and closer together. You sense that it's only a matter of time before somebody makes a move, and when that happens, it could shuffle the whole order in this midfield squabble. Back through Piff Paff, avoid the wreck to cell barrier on the inside, and then hard on the brakes, downhill, bumpy as well through Kirby, as you can see. Doug Carter there, the number 50 car, experienced radical racer, been racing radicals for quite a while now, has Doug. Adrian Reynard just a little bit wide there of the apex coming through Gracelands, and so Joe Locke is, well, he's not close enough to attack into Tarzan, but he's closer than he's ever been, and it looks like Reynard, well, he just about hooked up an apex, but Joe Locke is right there with him as we've had our lead change. So back into the race lead has gone Joe Stables. I say back into the race lead, he hasn't led this race yet, but of course he won race one. Can Phil Cooper come back at him though as they go down towards the Dean hairpin? He's certainly closing back in the slipstream, looks to the inside line, who's later on the brakes? It's going to be quite close, and Cooper up the inside line might be able to retake the race lead. Joe Stables with the momentum around the outside though will then also have the inside line down towards the next two right-handers. Needs to be careful not to run wide on the exit though. Cooper tries to get the switch back, but Joe Stables, an experienced enough racer to know how to tackle that corner, and so he does manage to complete the manoeuvre for the race lead. So Joe Stables, race winner from race one of course yesterday, looking for his third win of the year to extend his championship lead over the man that he's just overtaken, Phil Cooper. So car number 4, Phil Cooper, he really could have done with holding on to that position, but it just wasn't meant to be. And so Joe Stables has gone through, and now Phil Cooper has to watch his mirrors, because Lee Torrey is not far behind him and looking racy as well. Through Tarzan, back behind the paddock down the school straight, the racing school at Rockingham, based at this part of the circuit. That's the pit lane that you can see just to the right hand side there. Ooh, Joe Stables, look at that mistake there into the Brook chicane. He's really hurt his speed through there, and so Cooper actually will be right back with him as they come down onto the pit straight. Joe Stables just outbraked himself slightly then, going into the Brook chicane, trying to make good his escape, and that means that both Phil Cooper and Lee Torrey are now breathing down his neck once again. Through turn number 1, back towards the Dean hairpin, and is Cooper going to try and get underneath the number 98 car again, which ran very wide down here a lap ago. This time around, though, not making the same mistake twice. Joe Stables gets across to the apex nice and early and is able to hold on. Back into Yentwood, though, and Cooper now has to be careful, because if he starts making too many mistakes and trying to get the lead back, he could end up losing that second place to Lee Torrey. Lee is not running within the same class as Phil, so in a way, it might not be a terrible idea for Phil to just let Lee go and let him challenge the leader, Joe Stables. If Phil doesn't feel that he's got the pace to do it himself, maybe let him go and then try and follow him through if he can open the gap for you, because of course, much more similar cars. They're both SR3s, are Joe Stables and Lee Torrey's cars. Torrey in the RSX, but to all intents and purposes, it is the same car. Obviously a little bit quicker in theory, although it's Stables that's the quicker of the two this weekend. Phil Cooper just doesn't seem able to quite live with the pace of the race leader, and Lee Torrey now looks like he's a little bit quicker than him, so we could see a change for second place in the offing before too much longer, as we move through now into the second half of this race. Back across the start-finish line, and Phil Cooper in that second position. Can he hang on? Because Lee Torrey, we know that car is pretty quick in a straight line, but so too is Phil Cooper. Look at that. Phil Cooper pulling a decent gap as they hit the brakes down towards Dean hairpin. They both run a bit wide, but then as long as you get back to the second apex, which Lee Torrey did, Phil Cooper didn't, but Lee Torrey did, then you should still be able to carry speed out of the corner. Lee tries to convert that speed out of the corner into an attack into the next corner. That doesn't happen. And so it is still going to be Phil Cooper in second position, back through Piffpath, down into Kirby, and Phil Cooper, driving a very defensive race, has had to defend quite a lot in this race, indeed in both races. Not been able to hold on to the race lead in either of them, but second place would still go down very nicely and would equal his best finish of the season from race... sorry, it wouldn't, of course. He did win the opening race at Alton Park. It would equal his second place that he had in race 2 at Alton Park last time out. That was only a double header though at Alton Park because of the strict time curfew at Alton. It was a packed timetable, so only 2 races were scheduled for the Bikesports. 3 of them here at Rockingham though, and down into position 3 goes Phil Cooper, because Lee Torrey finally finds a way through and nicks that place back going in towards the Brook chicane. He runs a bit wide coming out though, and Cooper, we know, will fight back if he can. Now this is going to be an interesting test of straight line performance between the 2 cars. You can see completely different shape and size, but they seem reasonably evenly matched in a straight line. Maybe Torrey's car with a slight edge though, because even with a slipstream, Phil Cooper's losing a car length or so as they blast down through turn number 1 and into the Dean hairpin, but then running a bit wide there is Torrey, and so Cooper comes back at him side by side down in towards Yentwood. Now inside line on the way in for Torrey. This is how he lost the lead though, of course, to Joe Stables on the last lap of race 1 by defending into Yentwood and running wide on the exit. Doesn't make the same mistake again though, and so Lee Torrey stays second. Phil Cooper will feel that he's got a better chance maybe though of reclaiming second place from Lee Torrey than he had of retaking the lead from Joe Stables. Through Kirby down towards Gracelands, and yeah, gap is just starting to sneak back out again. One mistake from Torrey and Cooper will be right back with him, and let's not forget that Cooper was not that much slower than him in qualifying. Meanwhile, this battle's still raging further back, on board with Chris Preen. That's Joe Locke in front of us, and Adrian Reynard in front of him running wide, and Locke goes up the inside line, and will he make the move stick? He takes all of the curb and grass on the inside, throws it in the face of Chris Preen, but loses traction as a result, and so Reynard goes back through, and then Preen goes up the inside of Locke through Graceland, so a great to and fro battle this is. Preen will go through there and eases Locke out onto the curb, coming out of Graceland's corner. Now down into Tarzan. Down to second gear there, then hard on the accelerator out of the corner. This is the second place battle, weaving its way through some traffic, and that was the number 30 car of Mark Grayson going a lap down. And rather, well, getting in the way, but there's not much else he could do there because he had one go one side of him and the other one go the other side, and there's only room for really one car at a time into the Dean Hairpin because it tends to get rather congested on the exit. Position stays as it is, but it just adds to the issues here for Lee Torrey. He's not been able to pull a gap on Phil Cooper, and every time he starts to build up a bit of momentum and a bit of a rhythm, all of a sudden there are back markers in the way. That should be it for back markers though for some time, so he'll now try and get his head down in clean air and try to pull away from the now third place man. Still the leader of Class A though is Lee Torrey. Richard Stables is quite a long way back there. The grey and black car in the background behind the back markers is fourth overall, second in Class A. So it's still a class-winning performance this from Lee Torrey. Just as long as he can hang on to the flag. Back through the Brook Chicane, you can see the packed paddock there. It's a fairly sizable paddock here at Rockingham at the 750 Motor Club. You know when the 750 Motor Club is in town because the paddock is absolutely packed to the rafters. That was Joe Locke though, and that is Chris Preen in front, having a go at Adrian Reynard. Oh, and slamming on the brakes mid-corner. Now what happened there? That was almost as if he nearly ran into the back of Adrian Reynard then, into the Tarzan hairpin, and was very nearly rear-ended by Joe Locke as they went through the right-hander. They thankfully all kept away from each other, but it looks as though Reynard again is holding up Chris Preen through the slow corners. Chris will want to try and get through here as quickly as possible. He puts himself in the slipstream now across the start-finish line, flashing underneath the starting gantry onto another lap. We're fast running out of laps in this race though, less than 5 minutes to go, and well, Reynard's car there, you can see it's just quick enough as they flash down towards the Dean hairpin, but then he's a bit scrappy under braking, clearly struggling for grip is Adrian, and so Chris Preen will be seeing that that is his weakness. He's going to have a look at the inside into Yentwood surely, and this time the door is not closed in his face, and Chris Preen makes the move stick. Now it's Joe Locke's turn to try and find a way through. Joe Locke looking for the inside towards Kirby, can't do it. Adrian Reynard clearly struggling though as we go to the second half of the race. Maybe he's overworked the tyres. Up the inside goes Joe through Kirby. Oh, and again though, Adrian not afraid to close the door midway through the corner. Just sticks resolutely to his line, and in fact Joe Locke now very nearly losing a place to Doug Carter, who got up the inside briefly in towards Gracelands, but on the tight inside line was never going to be able to carry quite the same sort of speed through the corner as Joe was on the preferred racing line. And so Joe stays ahead. Back down the school straight into the Brook Chicane, and where is the move going to come from Joe Locke? He'll be frustrated because his playmate from the start of this race really has been Chris Preen, and Chris, you can see, is escaping up the road now. He's checked out ahead of this battle behind him. Joe Locke just doesn't quite seem to have the pace in a straight line. Maybe it's a downforce thing. Perhaps Adrian Reynard has got slightly lower downforce setup on that car. Of course, that is one of the things you can change with a Radical. That big rear wing, it's not just there for show, creates an awful lot of downforce and grip, but if you start tweaking with it, you lower the downforce, you increase your straight line speed, but you lose grip through the corners. And maybe that's what Adrian Reynard's done, because the car seems really quick in a straight line, but just really struggling through the corners. Towards Chapman, you can see that graphically there. Joe is able to really close in, but then there's nowhere to go. It's all left, right, left, right, left, right through the infield, and so once you get yourself up the inside into one corner, the next corner is probably going the other direction. He's also got to be mindful to an extent of Doug Carter, who's not a million miles behind him. Down into Gracelands again. That is quite a significant drop there into the corner, but again Joe Locke is significantly quicker through the turn. That is a spin, I'm afraid, for David Palmer in the Spire, who's rotated down at the Dean hairpin, but Joe Stables is going to go through onto his final lap of the race now. So Joe has been able to build up a really sizable margin over this pair, who have not left each other alone. Look, Lee Torrey and Phil Cooper, second and third place, could still change hands before the end of this race. Phil Cooper has shown himself to be a tenacious racer. He won't give in. He won't just accept third place. If there's half a chance of getting second place back, he's going to go for it. And even though they're not fighting for class position, it's still a position on track. It's still a place on the outright podium. So why not go for it? Through Gracelands, back down towards Tarzan goes the race leader. Number 15 car of Robert Rees is probably going to go a lap down before the checkered flag flies, you would imagine. But for Joe Stables, a third win in a row is going to further establish him as the championship leader. I don't think he's quite going to catch Robert Rees by the looks of it. So as Robert comes out of the final corner, he gets to enjoy one more lap of the Rockingham Motor Speedway. Oh no, he doesn't, because Stables just pips him going out of the final corner. So Joe Stables takes the win in race number 2 of the weekend. And second place, I think, will just go to Lee Torrey. This is the battle between Joe Locke and Adrian Reynard. And Joe Locke has now only got really a couple more opportunities to find a way through. The next corner is probably his best chance, and he gets a good run out of Gracelands, pulls himself alongside Reynard down towards the Tarzan hairpin. It's the outside line though. Can he get the switch back, or does he try to go right round the outside? He tries to go right round the outside. He'll carry good speed off the corner as a result of this. Reynard moves over on him though, and Joe Locke has to slow down to avoid the grass, and he's not happy with that. Understandably so, you have to say, because Adrian was, well, we've said that he's been closing the door on people all race long, and that was a bit of frustration there, I think, for Joe, who just breaks himself into the Brook chicane. But it will be Adrian Reynard, in rather robust fashion, who hangs on to what was 6th position, so 7th for Locke and 8th for Doug Carter. So Stables wins with Torrey second, the Class A winner. Phil Cooper is third ahead of Richard Stables and Chris Preen. Then it's Adrian Reynard, Joe Locke, Doug Carter, Mark Boot, and Julian Caldwell rounds out the top 10. Ashley Hicklin is next ahead of Robert Rees, Dave Palmer, Charles Adrian and Mark Grayson, whilst Adrian Williams was our only non-finisher.
Talk us through your race.
Well, a bit of a difficult start. I got pushed a bit wide, set into third place. Then managed to get my way through and make my way back to first. And after that, I luckily got away.
A bit of a mistake as well in the infield section, wasn't it?
Yeah, coming to the chicane, I locked the wheels up, going sideways, almost lost it, but managed to just get it.
Well done. Can you make it 3 out of 3?
That's what I hope to achieve. That's what I like. It's got to see.
Brilliant. All right, well, for now, go and enjoy it. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Phil Cooper, you started third, you finished third, but you're in first for a couple of laps. Decent race, decent result.
Yeah, the first thing is I want to thank K&N and Rock Oil really, because without their support I'd struggle to do it. We worked on the car late last night. We had third yesterday, qualified third in the race. Like I say, we made some changes, we learnt a bit, we improved it then, but not just enough. We had a good start, and I think Joe and Lee were scrapping with each other and we gapped them a little bit, but I could see Joe reeling me in, tried to stick with him. I couldn't, he was quick, and then when Lee got to me, the speed of his car down the main straight, I was trying to get him on the brakes into the hairpin, but no, he was gapping me too much down the straight. So I think he had a few problems towards the end, which made it interesting between me and him. But we need to go and have another think now before the third race and see what we can do again.